Hello! I've got a very exciting video today. Today, I have a build your own palette themed around none other than Face Forward, aka Ivy's Garden. Ivy is another YouTuber who is in the indie single shadow space, and she also has an awesome Instagram where on her stories she often will document her different plants in her garden, and they all are beautiful. So a couple weeks ago, Ivy came out with a really awesome video that is kind of a beginner's guide for indie eyeshadows. I'll link it down below if you haven't seen it yet. But in that video, she really dives in deep into all of the different components of how to get started in the indie eyeshadow space. And one part of it was shouting out different creators that she recommends, and I was one of them, which was so surprising to me and very exciting because I love Ivy's channel. And so after that video came out, I reached out to her, told her thanks so much for the shout out, and asked if she would have any interest in doing a video together. And she thankfully said yes. And so here we are now. After some brainstorming, we decided that since we're both major plant lovers, it would be kind of fun to do build your own palettes themed around each other's blooms for the summer season so far. So now we're gonna go ahead and get into this palette and what flowers inspired me to come up with this color story. So if you want to see some beautiful pictures of Ivy's flowers and also see some swatches of my eyeshadows, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. So first up, we've got this matte kind of yellowy orange shade. This is the shade Tiger from Luxy Beauty, and I chose this mostly to represent the coreopsis, and I hope I'm saying that right, that Ivy sent me pictures of, but then she's got this other flower as well that's kind of a little bit more orangey. I would say the coreopsis went a little bit more mustard yellow. This other flower went a little bit more orange, and so I split the difference right in the middle and decided to go with this matte color, which with the looks that I've done with this palette so far has been a really nice transition shade for some of like the more orangey and red colors. Next up, we've got another matte. This is like a bubblegum pink shade from the Simply Posh Fairy Tale Fairies palette, which I recently noticed that they are selling singles from those palettes now, so that's pretty exciting. But the flowers that inspired this are kind of twofold. There were a lot of pink and like especially light pink flowers throughout the pictures that Ivy sent me, which also, by the way, I would just like to take a second to admire Ivy's photography skills, because look at these pictures, you guys. They are so beautiful. I feel like I should see them in like a gardening magazine. But I felt like there were a lot of different places to get inspiration for the light pink. And so that's kind of why I added the next shade. This is Halley's Comet from Terra Moons. And this is kind of, again, a bubblegum pink. It maybe is a little bit leaning more Barbie pink, but it's sheer enough that I was kind of thinking it would be more of a light pink option. And I thought that the blue sparkle in it worked well with some of those light pink flowers that have hints of white in it, because when it shines in the light, it kind of looks like a white silver in some angles. But then on top of that, the pink and blue combined also kind of give me a little bit of purple, and Ivy did have a few purple flowers that she sent me that I wanted to kind of get some inspiration for, but I didn't want to have too much purple because I felt like overall a lot of her blooms leaned orange and pink more so than purple. Also red. There were quite a few beautiful red toned blooms. Now we've got this more peachy pastel orange. This one is definitely inspired by her lilies. Look how striking that orange color on her lilies is. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I have the perfect shade to represent that color, and that's where this one comes from. This is depotted from a Profusion palette. It was like their little 8 or 10 pan like neon palette, and honestly, they're colors that don't really get a lot of use from me, but I knew that this was the perfect moment to break this bad boy out. This is the Shine by SD shade Daylight that I just cannot get enough of. I actually originally had the Divina shade Skyla in here, but I felt like the shifts were a little too similar to another shade we'll get to here in a bit. So I switched it out for Daylight, and again, I was just looking for something that represented all of those beautiful orange tones, and this is a great shade to represent them because we have something that goes a little bit more reddish orange to a little bit more yellowy orange, and so it works well with both of these matte colors. And because it's so sheer in the base, I figured that I could layer it on top of either of those mattes to get a different look. I also was really interested in tying in green shifts wherever I could because Ivy had so much green surrounding all of her beautiful blooms, and I wanted to reflect that in some way. And so this shade does shift green. I will pull out the mirror at the end and try to show you that shift a little bit better because right now I know on camera you're mostly just getting the orange. This next one is a Divina shade called Frosty Surf, and again, I wanted to include this because of that green, like yellowy green sparkle that you can see in it, but I also wanted to include it because it's got a very deep reddish orange base, and Ivy had a few flowers that were red adjacent, one that was like a true red, but I didn't really want to put a true red in this palette because I just felt like it didn't fit quite as nicely as I would like. And so this is kind of my take on those more red leaning flowers, and you can see in the base we definitely do get some of like that warm reddish coral color coming through. And then on top of that, we've got that green sparkle, but it does shift to a pink as well. And when it does shift to that hot pink, it makes the shade look even more red. And so I figured it was a good one. Kind of going with that red theme, I pulled out this deep kind of burgundy red because I thought that it was a pretty close color dupe for this flower specifically. But I also thought that it would be nice to have some sort of deepening shade in this palette. It is depotted, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, I have no idea what brand this color is from. Given the shape and size of the pan, I'm thinking it might be either like Glam Light or Beauty Bay or maybe even Ace Beauté, but it's some brand that I have depotted. Really, for the sake of this video though, it's just a deep burgundy red that perfectly matches that flower that Ivy has growing. Oh, what a stunning color, by the way. Now we've got the Cleona shade Tracery, and Ivy sent me 2 different purple blooms, and so this is kind of representative of both of those. Then after the fact, she also sent me a balloon flower that she has blooming right now, which is probably one of my favorite types of flowers. I have those in my garden as well. I like this purple specifically because it does have that pink shift on top, and I thought that kind of tied it nicely to some of the other colors in this palette. I've had a lot of fun incorporating this in the looks that I've been doing with this palette, and I'll go ahead and show those to you at the end and kind of talk through which shades I used for each of those looks. But this one definitely has been popping up. It's a nice kind of contrast to those warmer oranges especially. Down here, we've got another Luxy Matte shade. This is the shade Bleeding Heart. And you guys, tell me that this matte is not like a perfect color dupe for this flower over here. As soon as I saw that flower, I was like, I have the literal perfect matte to represent that shade. And I gotta say, swatched out, I stand by it. I do think it is a very good color dupe for that flower. And what a stunning color. This one in person is almost like neon looking. It is such a bright reddish pink. Ugh, love it. And have really enjoyed using this one too as kind of a pop for different looks. Something else worth noting, I have done a few looks with just these Luxy Mats and they blend together so nicely, you guys. I was kind of hesitant with the first Luxy Mat I ever picked up. I thought it was just okay, but these really colorful ones are really good from Luxy. And if I remember right, I think they are having a sale and the mats are $2.50 right now, so maybe a good time to check out Luxy Mats if you're looking for some brighter colors to add to your collection. I know that in her indie guide, Ivy also mentioned those Luxy Mats, and so I definitely just want to echo her endorsement and say that if you are in the US, these mats are pretty good. So Ivy sent me one white bloom, and with the yellow center especially, I thought that this newer pickup for me, Phoenix from Terra Moons, was going to be a great symbolism of that bloom. And look how it kind of glows, you guys. This one has a kind of blue-white base that can be sheared out. And then on top, it's got a yellow sparkle that also shifts orange and maybe a touch green. Not as green as a shade like Zira from Divina, but it does go a little chartreusey at least, and so I thought that this is the one that I thought Skyla was a little too similar to, which is why I ended up going with Daylight instead. And you can see why I had to keep Phoenix in this palette, because it just complements that bloom so well. And also for the palette as a whole, it's nice to have a more inner corner type of shade. You guys, you know it had to make its way in here. This is the Cleona shade Palace. It's like my favorite single shadow right now. This has a pink base and then has a pink to peach to gold to chartreuse to bright like lime green shift. And again, I was looking for anywhere I could fit in a green shift. So I was like, well, Ivy has all of these beautiful peachy pink, light pink blooms, and this shade is that to a T, plus a little bit of green. And so that combination, I was like, I gotta put it in here. And so thank you, Ivy, for having flowers that allowed me to get even more use out of my favorite shade. And then last but not least, we've got another matte from Luxy. This is the shade Zinnia, which on name alone felt like a perfect addition to this palette. But I also felt like some of Ivy's blooms were that pink that kind of was leaning a touch purple, and this just felt like it matched those colors so well, and also kind of rounded out this palette in a really nice way and tied in that purple a little bit more. I feel like you could do a look with just these two shades and it would turn out beautiful and be very symbolic of those blooms that Ivy has in her garden this year. All right, I went ahead and pulled out the big mirror, but honestly, I'm not sure that you're really seeing much more of those shifts in the mirror compared to before when it was just my arm. I've changed my filming setup a little bit, and so I'm still trying to figure out the best way to show those shifts, but at least you can see how truly green this Frosty Surf shade goes. And I guess you'll just have to trust me on the rest of the shifts. This is definitely not my specialty. So this is the palette overall, and I'll kind of flash up a compilation of Ivy's flowers. Let me know, do you feel like I represented her garden well with this palette? Personally, I feel pretty proud of how close I was able to get to some of the striking colors in her blooms, but you guys will have to let me know what you think. Now I'll go ahead and pop up a few looks that I've done and walk you through each one. So the first look is a pretty typical look for me, I guess you could say. I started off with paper tiger just all over, and then I started adding bleeding heart a little bit to the outer corner and then blending that into my crease. Then I took the shade Frosty Surf and I focused it on the outer third of my lid, but then I kind of brought it in to the inner part of my lid too, just lightly, to kind of spread that base color to the rest of my look. Then on the inner third, I took Daylight and tapped that all over where Frosty Surf was. And then lastly, I took a concealer to block out a wing, and then I applied this shade Tracery from Cleona on top of that concealer to give me that purple wing. For the next look, I wanted to do my take on a halo eye, and so I started off with putting this shade from Simply Posh all over, kind of above my crease to kind of give me something to blend out into. Then I took this shade, Zinnia, and I started building that out on the edges of my crease to kind of give that halo effect. And then lastly, I took this reddish burgundy shade and built that into the inner and outer corner to add more dimension and truly give that kind of halo eye shape. I did the same thing with the mats underneath my eye on my lower lash line. And then for shimmers, I took Halley's Comet all over the lid as kind of my highlight shade. And then I used Tracery on the edges to kind of try to, again, build a little bit more depth into the look. Then for this last look, I went ahead and took this matte orange all over, just kind of with a fluffy brush to give me a little bit of a crease color. Then I just took Cleona Palace and layered that all over, and it was really interesting because I felt like when I did that, I saw a lot more orange coming out of Palace than I ever have before. But I typically do pair it with pinks, which I feel like gives that pink a little bit more of a pop in the base. But when paired with an orange, I really felt like they paired really nicely together. Then I went ahead and did a little wing on this one as well. And on the inner part of my wing, towards the inner corner of my eye, I used Bleeding Heart. And then I tried to do a little bit of an ombre wing and use this deeper burgundy color on the outside part of the wing. But I feel like in reality, it kind of just blended all together. And I totally forgot to mention this, but for both the first and the third look, I used Phoenix as my inner corner and brow bone highlight. I decided not to use it on that second look though, just because I felt like it would kind of take away from the halo eye, and I didn't know if it would play quite as well with an all pink look. Ivy sent me one of the looks that she did with the palette she made, and it is so beautiful, you guys. I don't want to spoil it. Let me know if you've seen her video, if you know the look that I'm talking about, because it is giving graphic, it is giving sweet and soft at the same time. How she managed to do both, I don't understand, but be sure to check out her looks that she did with the palette and the palette that she made overall, and let me know if you think that we did a good job of representing each other's gardens in the palettes that we built. Really quickly at the end, I just want to shout out Ivy again. I have her channel linked down below, so if you've gotten to this point in the video and you haven't checked her out, what are you doing? Go check her out right now. You won't regret it. I feel like Ivy has really inventive ideas with her channel that I don't see anyone else doing. She is so informative. She's got this calm, soothing voice that really just is enjoyable to watch. And in all of my interactions with her leading up to this video, she has just been the sweetest person. I have enjoyed talking with her, getting to know her, and I highly recommend that you all do the same. She's someone in the indie space who's totally worth following for her refreshing perspective and unique video ideas and just kind and generous personality. All right, before we end, I'll give you one more shot of all of those juicy swatches, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know down below which of Ivy's blooms is your favorite. For me, it's really tough to decide, but I feel like it's gotta be this one that this color is based on. It is just the most bright and vibrant bloom I have ever seen. It is jaw-dropping. I need to find something this color and put it in my own garden as soon as possible. But let me know your top bloom down below, and until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!